Hi, and welcome to Using the Predictive Power of STAR Assessments. My name is Eric Stickney, Director of Educational Research at Renaissance, and I'm joined by my colleague Louise Hansen. Together we'll be talking about linking STAR assessments to high-stakes tests, why we do it, how we do it, and how you can access the information. Before we get into high-stakes tests, let's take a minute to revisit our mission and why we're doing this. One way we can help accelerate learning is to provide teachers with the best, most relevant set of information possible on students in terms of what they're ready to learn next, how they've been growing, and what kind of trajectory they're on. This really gets to the heart of why we assess students at all. Here's a quote from a seminal text on assessment that says, "Assessment's really about making decisions about students." So we hope that before teachers and administrators decide that they're going to give a test like STAR or anything else, they have a set of questions in mind or a set of decisions that need to be made, and they'll use the information from that test to make those decisions. You know that STAR Math and STAR Reading are very efficient computer adaptive measures, and we have tried to extract as much value as possible out of these relatively short tests. We're an assessment company that doesn't believe you should be spending a whole lot of time testing students at the expense of instruction. So from these tests you can get a lot of things. You can get criterion and norm reference scores. You can get growth estimates such as student growth percentile. You can understand where a student is in the learning progression and what kind of content they're ready to learn next. And you can also get predictions of how the student is likely to do on upcoming high-stakes tests, and that's the focus of our talk today. What do we mean by high-stakes tests? Well, this is a subjective term, but most people would say anything that feels important or has consequences. And when you say high-stakes tests, the most common example would be the end-of-year or summative tests that are required in most states between grades 3 through 8 and in high school for both reading and math. And that's largely the focus of our linking that we do. Other examples include the reading gates that have been imposed in a few states that require students to perform at a certain level on a grade 3 reading test before they can advance to grade 4. Some other states have set up graduation requirements and end of course tests. And I think many students would say that the ACT and SAT college readiness tests are also high stakes tests. Why predict high stakes tests? Well, it's not just for the sake of making a prediction. Again, it gets back to what we said before about the purpose of assessment. We want to be able to make decisions, and we want to help you make decisions. Administrators in particular don't like surprises. They like to be able to see ahead of time how things are going. So they can use tests like STAR to estimate how well their students are going to do on the end-of-year tests. And they can do this at district, school, grade, classroom, or even in student subgroup levels. And they can track progress over time. But I think the most important thing is that educators can use the information to make decisions about resource allocation in terms of which students may need additional support. Why do we think we can use STAR assessments for this purpose? Well, we actually began this work almost 10 years ago under a partnership with a group called the Council of Chief State School Officers and representatives from 6 state departments of education. And we had a question, and our question was, can we use tests like STAR Math and STAR Reading to do a good job of predicting how well students will do on these high-stakes tests? Again, to help educators make decisions along the way. So we began a study, or a series of studies, that outlined how we would do data collection, how we would respect student privacy, how we would do analysis and reporting. And the procedures we established with that group those years ago are still in place today. And the results were excellent. We found that STAR could predict with very high rates of accuracy those end-of-year measures. So how do we do it? Well, it's really about connecting test scales. So every test has a scale. And it doesn't really matter what the scale is. It could be 1 to 50, or 0 to 1400, or 2000 to 3000. we need to connect the scale on STAR with the other tests. And let's use, for example, the high stakes end of year summative tests in grades 3 through 8 in reading and math. So we need to be able to connect point by point, scale to scale. There are a lot of different ways to do this. The most robust method, we believe, the one that has the best research support, is a procedure called equipercentile equating. And that's been around for a while, and it tends to give us the best results in terms of accuracy. It's not the easiest way to do this, but it is the best, we feel. So that's our preferred method for most of these linking studies. And at the end of the day, what it allows us to do is to connect all or nearly all points of the STAR scale with all or nearly all the points on the summative test scale. This begins by doing a study. We need actual student records. We need to match student STAR scores with their end-of-year state summative test scores. To do this, we go out and beg for data. We ask districts if they would be willing to provide their state summative scores, and if we could match those with the STAR scores. And many districts are very open to doing this because they see the value. They want to have these predictive reports in their STAR software. So we use a FERPA compliant process that is secure and respects student privacy to exchange that data, and we do the analysis in-house and we release all the results at the end. The one thing we don't report are the names of any districts or individuals that participate in our study. We sometimes partner with state departments of education to do this data as well. And if student data aren't available, we may use publicly available school-level results to help fill in some of the gaps. At the end of the day, what we get is called a concordance table. And here's a very small snippet of what a concordance table looks like. And it's basically saying one score on one test is roughly equivalent to another score in another test. And this is that point-by-point linking I was talking about before. This example is from STAR Math in grade 4 to the California State Test, also in grade 4 Math. The most interesting part of these studies is the evaluation. We do a lot of testing on our linking studies to make sure that STAR is doing a good job, because we don't want to put misleading information into the STAR software. So if something has made it into the STAR software, it has met these very high standards I'm going to review here. So one very simple test we do is called correlation, and you may be familiar with these. The values go from -1 to +1. Most experts would say something above 0.6 or 0.7 would indicate a fairly strong relationship between tests. I'm happy to say that STAR correlations are generally in the mid to high 0.7s and into the low and the mid 0.8s, which is quite good. And all that says is that STAR and the other tests, for example, as state summative tests in reading or math, are sorting the kids in about the same way. So correlations are a helpful indicator, but they don't actually tell us about accuracy. And for that, we use a number of other measures. One of them is called area under the curve, and it's a very important summary indicator of overall accuracy of STAR's ability to predict something else. So different researchers and groups such as the National Center on Response to Intervention have set a standard of about 0.85 is indicating that there is convincing evidence that one thing can predict another. So I'm happy to report also that STAR assessments do achieve this metric, and many of the area under the curve results are above a 0.9, which is excellent. In addition to that, there are a number of other tests that we do, such as sensitivity and specificity. And these basically tell us what kinds of errors are being made or what kinds of students are we not predicting correctly. And it's important to recognize that there's always going to be some level of error, and some level of error is tolerable. But for each of these other values, we have metrics that we want STAR to hit. And even it's important also to know that even if you took the same test, a month apart, so the same state reading test as a predictor of itself later on, there would be some movement there. There wouldn't be a perfect alignment. Students would move in and out of categories. So there's never going to be a perfect predictive result, but we've set some very high standards, and STAR tends to meet these standards very consistently. We produce a report for every state linking study that indicates the results of all the tests that I've just mentioned, and in addition to some information about our sample and our methodology. And again, the bottom line is that if we've put a study in the software and we released a report, that means it's met those very high standards. And so far, STAR has met standards for every test that we've tried to link to. So the concordance table I showed you earlier, that sample, was really at kind of a single point in time, assuming that students are testing at pretty much the same day. But we know that in reality, teachers and administrators want to be able to look ahead, maybe many months ahead, to see how students are doing. So here's how we do that. It begins with just students taking a STAR test. So, for example, they could be testing in September. Now, you're not taking the state test in September. That's usually in the spring. So what we do is we understand from the state when the state testing window is. We identify the midpoint of that window, and we use something called growth norms to estimate how the student is likely to grow from the test date to that point in the future. The growth norms are sensitive to subject, grade, and the student's score history. So again, it's just a way to estimate how is the student likely to perform in the future. So once we've projected ahead, then we go back to our concordance table and we figure out what kind of, how they might do on the state score, on the state scale. And then we refer to what the state has established as its state-defined proficiency levels. And most states have between 3 and 5 proficiency categories, such as proficient or advanced or below basic and so forth. And that's how we do the prediction. And it's important to note also that STAR is very flexible, so you don't have to just do this in September or January. You can give STAR pretty much whenever you want, and you get the same kind of prediction at every point in time. The software will always adjust based on the dates that you're taking the test, and will adjust those growth expectations based on how each student is doing. So what can STAR predict now? Well, pretty much every state summative reading and math test has a link with STAR, and you'll find that in the STAR software. The caveats are when state tests are brand new, we will probably have to spend several months before we can produce a linking study. And the reason is that we use actual student data to do the study. We do not make guesses. We need actual STAR records matched with actual state tests. So when a test is new, and in the last several years, about 80% of the states in the U.S. have made at least one or maybe 2 changes to their state test. So when that occurs, we need the new test from the state to be administered. We need the scores done. We need the proficiency categories finalized. And when that's done, we get the data, we do the analysis, and hopefully within a few months or maybe up to a year, we can produce that new linking study. For states that are very small, we may need multiple years before we get enough data because, again, we want to be very confident that we are making the right prediction, and we won't put it in the software until we are confident. So in addition to all those state summative tests, ACT and STAR are now linked. So you can use STAR to estimate performance on the college readiness test that most students take around grade 11. I'm also happy to announce that later in 2017 we'll be linking STAR with the College Board's SAT College Readiness Test. And additionally, STAR can also predict and is linked to NWEA's Measures of Academic Progress, or MAP test. So we've talked about why we do the linking and how we do the linking. And I'm going to turn it over to Louise to talk about how you can access the results in the software, which dashboards and reports give you these predictive reports. Louise?
Thank you, Eric. So now that you know a little more about the purpose of the linking studies and the research that supports them, the next step is to show you where you can find the reports and data that will help guide your decisions and move your students forward. My name is Louise Hanson. I'm a product marketing manager at Renaissance, and today I'm going to walk you through the steps to finding those reports and data to help guide your decisions. From your Renaissance welcome page, log in as a teacher administrator. Please note that you will have different capabilities within the software depending on your role. For example, district administrators have access to data for all the schools in their district, school administrators have access to data for all classes in their school, and teachers have access to data for their classes only. From your Renaissance homepage, choose Reading Assessments or Math Assessments. I'm going to choose Reading Assessments, but the steps I go through here are the same for both reading and math. So if you are looking for data for your STAR Math Assessments, the same steps are followed. From this page, click on Screening, Progress Monitoring, and Intervention. On the left side, under Setup, choose View Benchmarks. Here, you'll be able to view benchmarks for your school, district, or state. We are going to focus on state benchmarks because these are based on the linking studies. Because Renaissance is located in Wisconsin, the linking study shows Wisconsin data. However, when you log into your site, the linking study will be based on the most current information we've collected from your state. Notice here, grades 3 through 8 are highlighted. This is because these are grades that are taking the Wisconsin State Summative Assessment. Based on the data we've collected, we've also populated data for the non-linked grades. Because these grades are not strictly based on your state information, the district administrator can modify these benchmarks as needed. However, the benchmarks for the linked grades, in this case grades 3 through 8, cannot be modified. One question that educators in Wisconsin may ask is, why is grade 10 not highlighted? The state assessment is administered in grade 10. This is a great question. In order to do a linking study, we need state data along with STAR assessment data. Although 10th grade students in Wisconsin do take the state summative assessment, not enough students at the high school level are taking STAR assessments to do an accurate linking study. This situation may vary depending on the state you are in. So, to get a quick look at the state level expectation for all grades in your district, view this screen under Screening, Progress Monitoring, and Intervention. While we're on this page, let's take a quick look at screening dates. On the left side of the screen, under Setup, choose View Screening Dates. Here is where administrators with the capabilities to set up screening windows will do so. Typically, schools set up screening windows testing all students 3 to 5 times each year. When and how often you test your students depends on your school and testing calendars, so please follow your district protocol. Setting up these windows will be helpful when running a screening report. Now that we've viewed screening dates, let's take a look at some reports. Return to the home page, click on Reading or Math Assessments, and choose Reports. Here you'll see a wide variety of reports. However, we're just going to focus on screening and state performance reports. Under Frequently Used Reports, you will find Screening. Choose your customization options, your reporting period, your benchmark. In my site, the benchmark is defaulted to the state assessment. However, pulling down the drop-down arrow will show me options for school and district benchmarks as well. And I will then click in the student details. The screening report provides a visual representation of how students have performed on STAR assessments based on state benchmark expectations. The first page shows you a graph indicating the percentage of students performing above proficiency and the percentage of those performing below proficiency. The additional pages on the screening report highlight individual students' results, helping you to quickly identify which students are performing at or above benchmark and which students may need additional support and instruction. The next report is the State Performance Report. Let's return to the Reports page. And under Additional Reports, you'll find State Performance Class and State Performance Student. we'll quickly look at the state performance class. Choose my class and choose the test date ranges. The State Performance Report shows you how students are likely to perform on the state summative assessment based on their performance on the STAR assessments. This report, the class report, shows you how the class, based on the class average, is likely to perform at the time of the state assessment. To dig deeper into student data, go back to Reports and choose State Performance Student. Click on Students and choose an individual student. The student report allows you to see how the individual student is likely to perform on that state assessment. After 3 or more tests, the black trend line will appear, showing you the direction the scores are moving, giving you enough time before the state assessment to change any instructional practices that are necessary. In addition to the reports, you also have access to dashboards. Let's return to the home page and click on dashboards. We have reading dashboards and math dashboards. Again, they work very similarly, so if you can navigate through one, you can navigate through the other. From the dashboards page, you'll have the opportunity to take a quick tutorial of the dashboards. We're going to jump right on in and take a look at the overview dashboard. STAR dashboards combine STAR assessment data on the left along with practice data if you're using Accelerated Reader 360, or Accelerated Math 2.0 data on the right. It provides a 360-degree view of student performance at a glance. When you open the dashboard, the left side of the screen shows you data from the STAR assessments. The information here is for Mr. Shovak's 7th hour class at West Middle School. You can view this class performance through various lenses, including all-time view, school year view, last 30 days, or last 7 days. If you've set up marking periods, you'll also be able to view data within that marking period. You can also view individual student performance by selecting that student. Choose the drop-down arrow, select Students, again, you'll be able to view an individual student performance within certain time frames. Here, we are looking at student performance within that current school year. The 464 score in the blue circle represents the student's first scaled score of the current school year. By analyzing data from millions of students, STAR Assessments has calculated that this student needs to obtain a scaled score of 628 to reach or maintain proficiency based on benchmarks. This potential outcome is labeled target score. The 553 projected score represents the score of students growing at a typical rate. However, as a student continues to take additional tests, that score may change, and that is labeled as predicted. Hovering over the 2 blue dots on the screen shows the scaled scores obtained during the course of this school year so far. The score of 69 in the green diamond represents the Student Growth Percentile Score, or SGP. The SGP in this case indicates that this student has shown more growth than 69% of her academic peers nationwide. The green diamond represents high growth. If the diamond were yellow, that is an indication of typical growth, and a red diamond would indicate low growth. The top of the chart shows the cohort comparisons. You will see the difference between the student's student growth percentile and the median for the group, the class, the school, and district, depending on comparisons available. In this example, the +7 under the class median means that this student's growth percentile is 7 points above the median for the class. It's 18 points above the median for the school. You'll also have information for the district as well as national data. Research shows that student growth is maximized when targeted instruction is coupled with regular practice. The right side of the screen will feature practice data from Accelerated Reader 360, Accelerated Math 2.0. The left side shows you assessment data, providing greater insight into student achievement and growth and giving you the power to accelerate learning for all students. I realize that we went over a lot of information in this short amount of time, but to help you navigate the software and understand the data, please check out the help files. Located in the upper right corner, you'll notice the question mark. Here you will find a variety of topics related to Renaissance products. With the time we have remaining, let's return to the PowerPoint and highlight some frequently asked questions regarding linking studies. The first question, when will my state's new test be linked to STAR assessments? And the answer is as soon as we can. Several things that we need before we can complete those linking studies is the new test to be administered at least once, the proficiency standards to be finalized by the State Department of Education, and the scores and data to be finalized and distributed to districts. Then we'll need some time to collect the data from districts who are willing to share those scores, do the analysis, release the report, and update the software. When do you update the linking studies? We will update the study when either the test content or scale change significantly, or the state proficiency benchmarks are updated by the State Department of Education. Additionally, we may tweak a study to optimize accuracy if substantial amount of new data becomes available. And our last questions, how should we interpret these scores in the View Benchmark section? These are the minimum estimated scores for reaching each state-defined proficiency level at the time of the state test. In other words, the scores are the same year-round and do not account for growth. The non-linked grades, often those grades outside of grades 3 through 8, are estimated using normative data from nearby linked grades. This concludes our session on the linking studies. We hope that you found this information helpful. On behalf of Renaissance, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions or are looking for additional information, please contact us using the contact information you see on your screen. Again, thank you and have a great day.